Hey everybody, we're here today. We're going to be putting a new carburetor here on this BR600 backpack blower. We ran our initial tests. We tested the tank, we checked for spark, we've done all of that and narrowed it down to that the carburetor is at fault. So that's what we'll be doing today, is putting this here new carburetor on the blower so we can get this out to the customer today. So we got our variety of tools here. We got a drill with our Torx bit on it, as well as M8 driver, some adjustment tools for the new carburetor once we get it in, and can't always go wrong without having a screwdriver there just in case. So we'll start by taking off this air filter cover. So loosen those two screws and that pops right off. Got this air cleaner here, pops off as well. Normally, sometimes you need a little finesse. Set that aside, and then you'll have to remove this front cover, which there's 3 screws that hold the rewind starter, and then 4 screws that hold the actual cover, and all of those have to come out. So we have a magnetic tray here to keep our screws in so nothing gets lost. That just slides off like so. Then you got 4 screws up here, 2 up here and 2 down here. These bottom 2 are a little tricky. And this here cover just slides off like so. Set that aside. Grab that screw loose. Remove that spark plug wire, just so nothing ignites. You have to then disconnect. Correct? We'll leave that on. Just disconnect the spark plug so we don't have anything except the spark. And you have 2 screws here that hold this assembly on, which holds the carburetor. Then you also have a screw here in the front.
What size are those screws?
These are a T27 is the typical size of these screws. They do have a couple that are sometimes a little smaller, but on average, T27 will fit most of them. Okay, and then this just pops off like so. Disconnect our fuel lines here, our breather hose, and our throttle cable. And here we have the old one that is off. So we'll set that one aside, away from our new one so that we don't get them mixed up. I like to take a paper towel and just kind of clean up some of the fuel that's leaked out of the old carburetor. That way we got clean surface to start with. You take your new one and just kind of pops back into place. I always like to start with my cable here, so that way I can make sure it goes in. Then you take this fuel line over to here, which is your inlet. That connects to the breather. And now kind of hold it in place while you grab your other piece, this hose here that goes into the primer bulb, and then the other hose goes back into the tank. This hose connects right up here on the top. pushes into, just gotta kind of make sure everything flows together well.
There's some little grooves back there on this side back here. You can kind of see them. You want to make sure you get all of these little lines lined up within.
And this throttle cable and this cable here connect into those as well. And that pops in there. There's a little spacer that sits back there. And then you just got to put the screws back in it. So that way everything remains in place. I always like to get both screws started in the carburetor before I tighten anything up. That way I know things are lined up like they're supposed to.
Super important when you're putting these screws back in, use a hand tool, not a power drill.
Otherwise you can over tighten those and all you're screwing into is plastic. So you can see there, that's all you're screwing into is that little piece right there.
They have a little brass little ring in there, you can crack those out.
So if you put it in with a power tool, you'll over tighten them and end up spending more money because you have to fix it. So I like to get that one so it's almost snug. And then do this bottom one, same way. Kind of a little long-winded screws, but that way they hold the carburetor in place. And then you just go till they're snug. Don't have to be extremely tight, just good and snug. You'll take your other screw here and put it back right there. Once again, do this one by hand as well, so you don't strip anything out.
This screw here is actually screwing into the bottom of the engine block.
And I always like to prime the primer bubble, make sure it'll pull fuel like that. You can see here, push that in. All that does is pull the fuel through the carburetor into this bubble and back into the tank. So you can push that primer bulb as many times as you need and you won't flood the machine. Whereas on some older units and how they used to work, you'd flood the machine. With new technology today, they've made it a lot more convenient. I always like to put this on next.
Make sure to inspect your filter, that it's clean and everything.
So this one is clean. I can hold up to the light. I can see through it. I don't know if you'll see it on the camera very well, but you can see it. This style filter, you don't really clean them. If you start to see a loss of power in your blower and your filter's dirty, just replace the filter. Don't try cleaning them. You can actually damage the filter by doing so. All right, just pops back in there. I put this part on next. So that way my filter stays in place. I gotta go in from the bottom and then it's nice to get that to sit where it's supposed to. Once again, go in with a hand tool. And those will just tighten up and make the seal on that filter. And you gotta put that spark plug wire back on. Take our bracket here, housing. Kind of gotta get this one started on the top, and then you gotta lift up the blower just a little, so that way those little spacers sit over that like they're supposed to. Just a little tap gets that set in place. These are little screws. Once again, use a hand tool because you're screwing into plastic. Sometimes you need a little flashlight just so you can see under there, so you can get these started in the right location. You stick it on the end of the screwdriver. This one is actually missing the screw, so I'll have to grab a new one. Take our rewind starter. This slides back in place. Only fits one direction. Take our 3 screws. Once again, I like to get all 3 of these started before I tighten anything up. And just go till they're snug. So, now we got the carburetor in place. We'll take it and get it started real quick and go from there. I'll go outside for that. Okay, ready to this. So we go outside for this, so that way we have our exhaust isn't inside where it can, cause you to get sick. So to start that up, I'm gonna push that primer bulb a few times, get fuel cycle through, turn this knob up to the choke, and pull the throttle and lock the throttle in place. Easiest way to do it, put your foot on that little step. So we'll use this little tool, it's called a tachometer. It just reads the electric pulses coming off the ignition coil and tells you how fast your engine is running. This engine on the low side should be running around 2,800 RPMs, and on the high side will be around 7,000 RPMs, give or take a few. So,
and these numbers don't have to be exact.
I accidentally shut it off. That's telling me there's something that needs to be adjusted just a little. Take our little special tool that's designed for adjusting these. We'll turn that just a little. And just like that, got a new carburetor put on there and it's running like it should. So we'll give the customer a call and get it out to them.
Thanks for looking at our show. You went outdoor power equipment.